Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Kainamui wash processed Kenya from April Coffee Roasters. And there's the bag right there. And April based out of Copenhagen, Denmark, and this coffee was featured in a recent blind taste test rankings video where it finished second place out of 3 April coffees on that day. Now, if you watched that video, you'll saw that when we were unboxing these coffees, we were super excited to see that there was a Kenyan included. And the Kenyan performed pretty well actually on that table, considering it's probably well documented at this point that Kenyan coffees typically are not our favorite. They have this savory, as people note, tomato component to them quite often, and this coffee definitely had that. But what really stood out on the first impression was this really nice foresty berry component that was coming from the coffee. So we were looking very much forward to seeing how this coffee would develop over the coming week. This right here is day 36 of this coffee. And recipe we have for April, again, they have a brew guide on their website, so we followed it. It is a 16.671 water to coffee ratio at 205 degrees Fahrenheit. We brewed it to the Chemex. Again, April's pretty light, so we have a light Nordic for the roast profile. And let's start discussing this coffee itself. So day 29, blind taste test day, solid first impression overall. Most pronounced thing we were getting was at this warmer temperature, this very forest-like berry component, which of course we noted in the video. Stood out, dark berries. Kind of a dark colored cup. We were getting some slight florals, some maybe slight darker florals in that cup. And then it cooled off and it became pretty Kenyan-like. So we're getting quite a bit of savoriness. And of course, as we kind of noted, it did have a little bit of that tomato. Day 31, again, warmer temperatures yield these great kind of deep forest berry components. And that was a theme and pretty consistent throughout drinking this cup of coffee. And as we drank the coffee today at warmer temperatures, yeah, I actually really do like the way that this kind of darker berry component does come out from this cup. I think they have it listed as a gooseberry. Don't exactly know what a gooseberry tastes like, but probably assume it has something to do with this darker berry that we're getting. Prominent savoriness, of course, again, and some slight chocolate as the coffee had cooled down. I think we were getting a little bit more chocolate on this day than we did get on other days, but just worth noting. Day 32, I think we let the coffee cool down a little bit too much because, yeah, we were definitely getting some very Kenyan-like characteristics in this cup, that, of course, being some pretty strong savoriness. Lots of strong tomato, vegetable components in the coffee as it has cooled down. It's a pretty lively cup overall. Most Kenyans are pretty lively, and that's something we've come to expect with a lot of these Kenyans. And it finishes off into the previously mentioned chocolate, which is pretty prominent on this day as well as a nice bit of herbs and earthiness in this cup too. Day 34, we tried that pre-ground method again, but this time we only did it for 6 hours. So we ground the coffee, we let it sit for 6 hours in an air-sealed container, and then we brewed the coffee, and we got better results this time around than when we let it sit for 12 hours. So what we would say on this day was it was essentially pretty juicy, pretty acidic, as you'd kind of expect, classic Kenyan in so many senses. A nice bit of the citrus had kind of died down ever so slightly, which made the coffee a little bit more palatable in our experience. And what they have listed on here is the red apple note, and I think when we were getting so much acidity throughout this cup of coffee, it was kind of the citric acidity, and we were thinking, what is this most reminiscent of? And apple makes a lot of sense. So really like the apple flavor notes that they have listed on here, as well as the gooseberry. We just kind of assume that that's probably what this darker berry component we're getting from this cup is. So that was our experience, and yeah, I would say it's pretty consistent with what they have listed here, in addition to a lot of those Kenyan characteristics. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we're getting. And after having made our second tasting wheel in relation to April's coffees, we're starting to see some themes here, as this is the second coffee that has the top of the tasting wheel looking the exact same. Finish level 4, sweetness level 3, acidity level 4. So we're starting to get the sense that a lot of April's coffees have these very lasting finishes, that they are sweet but not overly sweet, and they are pretty acidic cups of coffee. This one's a lot less clean, but it's a Kenyan versus an Ethiopian, so that's very much to be expected. This tasting wheel as a whole looks very much like, again, another really lightly roasted coffee tasting wheel would probably look. Other things worth noting, savoriness at level 4. This is a very Kenyan coffee. It is very savory, especially as it cools down, getting so many of those savory characteristics. Citrus fruit at level 4, and that's going to be for the apple because that kind of very strong apple citric acidity. Yeah, it's pretty high. And let's see what else is worth noting. Nothing else. Well, another thing that we wanted to kind of compare this one alongside the Ethiopia with is almost everything on this tasting wheel is at least at a level 2, whereas I think the only thing that was missing on that Ethiopia tasting wheel was maybe there was one trait on here that didn't reach a level 2. I should pull that up and look at it right now, but for the most part, with April's coffees, you get at least a little bit of everything in the cup of coffee, which is kind of nice. I do actually enjoy that about coffees, when you get at least a level 2 on everything in this tasting wheel. So those are some themes I've seen between both of their coffees. Curious how that might translate into the third coffee, the Costa Rica, which we're going to be reviewing next and posting the video of that one next. All right, overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. As noted earlier in the video, when it comes to the big coffee countries, Kenyans typically are probably our least favorite. So that being said, given that this is a very Kenyan coffee, was never going to be our favorite, but there were some things that we very much enjoyed about this Kenyan specifically. Those berries, most notably, don't particularly love apple acidity, and we mentioned that in so many videos. So getting a pretty strong hint of that apple acidity, a pretty strong hint of the savoriness, will never translate well into something that we will necessarily enjoy. But given some really nice characteristics in this cup, most notably those berries, as well as, I thought that I feel like there was something else I'm missing here. It kind of had a slight bit of a candy sweetness to it as well that we haven't noted on yet. Those were some really positives that we took away from this cup of coffee. Type of person we would suggest this coffee to, and again, we feel like this is a cop-out, light Kenyan, people that really like their light Kenyan coffees. This is a pretty nice fit for you. Most notably, you have to be in the mood for that pretty strong, like apple acidity that's very much in here. You have to be pretty okay with the savoriness. I know a lot of people really cherish and embrace these strong Kenyan characteristics. So very much somebody that's a diehard Kenyan proponent. This is a pretty, it's a pretty traditional, pretty standard Kenyan, just very lightly roasted for us anyway. But I think we're going to leave this coffee at that, as we still do have the Costa Rica, and I think by the end of that Costa Rica video, we'll probably touch on how these coffees finished in our experience, as well as just kind of wrapping up overall our experience with April. But yeah, again, we'll just leave it at that. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. But this right here has been a review of the Kainamui wash processed Kenya from April Coffee Roasters. Thank you for watching.